I Am Martin Luther King Jr. by Brad Meltzer, illustrated by Christopher Eliopoulos. I am Martin Luther King Jr. When I was little, I used to get into a lot of accidents. One day, my little brother hit me in the head with a baseball bat. 2 other times, I mistakenly got knocked over by a car. Another day, I tumbled over our banister, then bounced through an open door into the basement. No matter how many times I fell, I kept getting back up. Whoa! Amazing fall! You okay? Bam! I'm okay! Even before I could read, I knew I liked books. My dad always talked about how I kept a lot of books around me. I used to tell my parents, there is a power in words. Big words were in my future. When I grow up, I'm going to get me some big words. When I was 6 years old, one of my best friends was a boy whose father owned a store across the street. My friend was white. I was black. It didn't matter to us. We would play games and have fun together. Tag, you're it. No, you're it. No, you're it. No, you're it. But when we started going to school, everything changed. He went to a school where all the kids were white. I went to a school where everyone was black. Soon after, he told me, I can't play with you anymore. Why? My dad said so. He doesn't want us being friends. But why? You're one of my best friends, aren't you? Aren't you? I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. At dinner, my parents explained, it's because you're black and he's white. I was so mad that day. How could someone treat me differently just because of the color of my skin? I wanted to hate my friend and his father. But my parents told me to do the opposite, that I should love my friend, even though he hurt me. They taught me that it's better to have more love in your life than more hate. Then my mother taught me one of the most important lessons of all. You are as good as anyone. You must never feel that you are less than anyone else. I wanted to believe it, but every day I saw the opposite. I saw you could be treated unfairly just because of the color of your skin. If you were white, you went to a good school with great playgrounds and plenty of books. If you were black, your school was small, sometimes with no desks or even windows. Check it out, a playground. Check it out. Where's our playground? It wasn't just the schools. Black people had to use different water fountains, different elevators, even different bathrooms. In fact, on a hot day, when everyone wanted ice cream, if you were white, you could sit at the counter and eat from a nice dish. But since I was black, if they served me at all, it was through a side window and they put my ice cream in a flimsy paper cup. This ice cream is perfect. This ice cream is melted. It got even worse when I was 14. I had just won a speech competition. My speech was about being fair to all people. I was so excited. Then, on the bus ride home, a few white people got on board. At first, I stayed put. It didn't seem fair, but my teacher convinced me to move. We spent the rest of the ride standing and getting tossed in every direction. Every day, this is what life was like. Black people were treated terribly. The only question was, you need to give up your seat to the whites. It was the angriest I have ever been. What could I do about it? At the age of 15, I started college. By 19, I became a minister and entered seminary school to study religion. Over those years, I read the works of Henry David Thoreau and Mahatma Gandhi. Thoreau taught me about civil disobedience, how an evil system could be changed without violence. Gandhi opened my mind to the power of love. Nonviolent resistance? What's that? It's using love and peaceful methods to change unfair things in society. It was a lesson I wanted to share with everyone. In no time at all, I got my chance. In Alabama, a Black woman named Rosa Parks was told to give up her bus seat to a white man. It was just like what happened to me. But unlike me, Mrs. Parks refused. She was arrested. Early the next morning, I got a phone call from a local community leader. It's time to take a stand. We should boycott the buses so everyone knows that we won't accept this treatment anymore. You know that's not going to be easy. Do not ask if it's easy. Ask if it's right. It was just like Thoreau taught. Instead of using violence to protest the unfair rules, Black people would use a peaceful method. We would not ride the public buses. Without our money, the bus companies would go out of business. Now the only question was, would it work? On the first day of the protest, my wife called me to the window. The buses are all empty. It's working. We had to keep it going. As the head of the bus boycott, I gave one of the most important speeches of my life. The room was packed. Camera crews were filming. I had only 20 minutes to prepare. I didn't use notes, but by speaking from my heart, I found out how big words can be. We are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. When the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say, there lived a race of people, a Black people, who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights. The police put me in jail, saying I was breaking the law. Other folks bombed my house, but instead of using my fists, I kept my calm. Don't you want to fight back? I am a man of nonviolence, and I know that I do not stand alone. We are with you all the way, Reverend. If no one rides these buses, we'll go out of business. You're finally getting that, huh? For more than a full year, every Black person in the city, and some white people too, refused to ride the buses. That meant some people had to walk for miles, but they kept going. There was a power in standing together. Eventually, our peaceful protest worked. The rules were changed. Public buses could no longer separate people based on the color of their skin. That was only the beginning. Soon, our peaceful protests sparked other peaceful protests. At lunch counters, college students organized sit-ins where they would not stop until everyone could eat together. Our methods of nonviolence were so powerful, I was invited to meet the president at the White House. But sometimes the hardest problems were right at home. Daddy, look, an amusement park. Please, can we go? I'm sorry, Yogi, we can't. Funtown is not open to Black people. Seeing my daughter cry was one of the most painful moments of my life. It only made me work harder for change. Was it easy? Absolutely not. During one protest in Birmingham, Alabama, the police again arrested me and locked me in a dark jail cell that had only one window. Someone slipped me a newspaper in which white religious leaders had written an article calling us lawbreakers. Someone then snuck me a pen. In that jail cell, I wrote my own response in the margins of the newspaper and even on toilet paper. My letter from Birmingham jail was soon published as a pamphlet. Then it was in magazines and newspapers. Today, it has been read by millions of people. Like I said, it is amazing how big words can be. Our message was so important, even kids your age joined us. In Birmingham, during the Children's Crusade, more than 1,000 kids, some as young as 6 years old, showed up to march. What do you want? Feed 'em. The first day, the police arrested 900 of them. The next day, 2,500 children showed up, ready to go to jail. This was our finest hour. Enraged that we were not giving up, the chief of police told the firemen to spray the children with water hoses and attack them with dogs. They thought it would stop us, but instead, as the whole country watched on TV what they were doing to our children, it was a wake-up call for the nation's conscience. How can they treat little kids like that? That's not right. We need to help them. 90 days later, the rules began to change. Now Blacks and whites in Birmingham were using the same lunch counters, water fountains, and restrooms. You could feel it in the air. More change was coming. Freedom was contagious. By the summer of 1963, an estimated 1 million Americans held their own protests in cities across the country. A man named A. Philip Randolph suggested a massive march. If we march together peacefully, they won't be able to ignore us. Together we can convince Congress and the President to pass laws so that no one in America can treat people differently based on skin color. I like the idea. Where should we have it? There's only one place. People came from almost every state. They came in nearly every form of transportation. They even took off work and did not get paid just to be there. Old people, young people, Black people, white people, even children like you. They all came to Washington, D.C., gathering in a righteous army. Why? Because they wanted a change, and they knew the surest way to change the world is to stand together. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. On August 28, 1963, I stood at the podium and spoke what some later called my biggest words of all: March on Washington for jobs and freedom. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. Let freedom ring from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. After the March on Washington, the President and Congress passed new laws for civil rights, but that didn't mean our work was done. Indeed, our greatest battle was still to come. It began with 600 activists as they tried to walk 54 miles from Selma, Alabama, to the state capital of Montgomery. Back then, there were rules that stopped black people from voting. If you want to change the laws, you have to be able to vote for new people who make the laws. The police had billy clubs and tear gas. They attacked our group and knocked many people down. But as I learned so long ago, you have to get back up. No matter how hard they hit us, we remained peaceful. Still, we didn't get through. We're marching to tell the governor we want voting rights. This brutally must end. No matter what, don't let them pass. 2 days later, we tried again. Now there were 2,500 of us. We will get to Montgomery. No, you won't. I promise you won't. Once again, we tried. Once again, we did not get through. Did we give up? What do you think? It was Sunday, March 21st, 1965, our 3rd try. Now we had 8,000 people with us. We are on the move. We shall overcome. Check out the crowd. Black, white, Christian, Jewish, all standing together. For 2 days we marched. Rain could not stop us. The world was watching. The White House was too. President Johnson even sent troops to protect us. Exhaustion could not stop us. As we reached Montgomery, Alabama, tears were shed. But this time, they were tears of joy. In my life, people tried to tell me I wasn't as good as they were, just because of the color of my skin. When someone hurts you like that, it can be tempting to hurt them back. You must refuse. When someone shows you hate, show them love. When someone shows you violence, show them kindness. To reach our goals, we must walk the path of peace. We must lock arms with our brothers and sisters. We must march together. When we do, our voices will be heard and freedom will ring. Remember Funtown Amusement Park? Its doors eventually opened to Black people, and Dr. King got to take his daughter. Did you know that he was the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize at that time? Just 35 years old. He donated the prize money to the civil rights movement. He said that the prize was the work of many other unsung heroes. He fought against poverty too. There's even a national holiday for him, the 3rd Monday of every January. Only Washington and Lincoln get a day like that, and they share theirs. It's a day to remember how far we've come. and how much more work there is to do. I am Martin Luther King Jr. I stand for peace. I stand for justice. I stand to help others. I stand as proof that no matter how hard the struggle, we must fight for what is right and work to change what is wrong. Whatever struggle you face, no matter how hard it gets, you must always move forward. I am proof of this. If we rise up, if we stand together, if we remain united, nothing can stop our dream. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe. See you later, alligator. A Picture Book of Martin Luther King Jr. by David A. Adler, illustrated by Robert Casilla. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of America's great leaders. He was a powerful speaker, and he spoke out against laws which kept Black people out of many schools and jobs. He led protests and marches demanding fair laws for all people. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Martin's father was a pastor. His mother had been a teacher. Martin had an older sister, Willie Christine, and a younger brother, Alfred Daniel. Young Martin liked to play baseball, football, and basketball. He liked to ride his bicycle and to sing. He often sang in his father's church. Martin center with his brother Alfred Daniel left and his sister Willie Christine right. Young Martin played in his backyard with his friends. One day he was told that two of his friends would no longer play with him because they were white and he was Black. Martin cried. He didn't understand why the color of his skin should matter to anyone. Martin's mother told him that many years ago, Black people were brought in chains to America and sold as slaves. She told him that long before Martin was born, the slaves had been set free. However, there were still some people who did not treat Black people fairly. In Atlanta, where Martin lived, and elsewhere in the United States, there were white-only signs. Black people were not allowed in some parks, pools, hotels, restaurants, and even schools. Blacks were kept out of many jobs. Martin learned to read at home before he was old enough to start school. All through his childhood, he had read books about Black leaders: Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, George Washington Carver. Martin was a good student. He finished high school 2 years early and was just 15 when he entered Morehouse College in Atlanta. At college, Martin decided to become a minister. After Martin was graduated from Morehouse, he studied for a doctorate at Boston University. While he was there, he met Coretta Scott. She was studying music. They fell in love and married. In 1954, Martin Luther King Jr. began his first job as a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. The next year, Rosa Parks, a Black woman, was arrested in Montgomery. She had been sitting just behind the white-only section on a bus. When all the seats in that section were taken, the driver told her to get up, so a white man could have her seat. Rosa Parks refused. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led a protest. Blacks throughout the city refused to ride the buses. Dr. King said, "There comes a time when people get tired of being kicked about." One night, while Dr. King was at a meeting, someone threw a bomb into his house. Martin's followers were angry. They wanted to fight. Martin told them to go home peacefully. "We must love our white brothers," he said. "We must meet hate with love." The bus protest lasted almost a year. When it ended, there were no more white-only sections on buses. Dr. King decided to move back to Atlanta in 1960. There, he continued to lead peaceful protests against white-only waiting rooms, lunch counters, and restrooms. He led many marches for freedom. In 1963, Dr. King led the biggest march of all, the March on Washington. More than 200,000 black and white people followed him. "I have a dream," he said in his speech. "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The next year, in 1964, Dr. King was awarded one of the greatest honors any person can win, the Nobel Peace Prize. The country was changing. New laws were passed. Blacks could go to the same schools as whites. They could go to the same stores, restaurants, and hotels. White-only signs were against the law. Dr. King told his followers to protest peacefully, but there were some riots and some violence. Then, in April 1968, Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee. He planned to march so black and white garbage workers would get the same pay for the same work. On April 4th in Memphis, Dr. King stood outside his motel room. Another man, James Earl Ray, was hiding nearby. He pointed a rifle at Dr. King. He fired the gun. An hour later, Dr. King was dead. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a world free of hate, prejudice, and violence. Carved on the stone which marks his grave are the words, "I'm free at last." Thanks for watching. Click subscribe. See you later, alligator. Martin's Big Words, The Life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by Doreen Rappaport, illustrated by Brian Collier. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs, "White Only." His mother said these signs were in all southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin read the words, he felt bad until he remembered what his mother told him. "You are as good as anyone." In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible. He listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. "When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too." Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father, and he used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great. He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. Martin said love when others said hate. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He said together when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery's black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided not to ride the buses until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in rain and cold and in blistering heat. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them until the white city leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. When the history books are written, someone will say there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for their rights. In the next 10 years, black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching. Wait! For years I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists. Martin convinced them not to by reminding them of the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world. Many white Southerners hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed, but he refused to stop. Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped because God is with this movement. The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protests, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation. The white-only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words, not fists. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee. He went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them and talked with them and sang with them and prayed with them. On his second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are alive for us today. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe. See you later, alligator. I Am Brave, a little book about Martin Luther King Jr. by Brad Meltzer, illustrated by Christopher Eliopoulos. I am Martin Luther King Jr. Come dream with me. A dream is an adventure that you build inside your mind. Can you count all of my books? My dreams grew big with books, even as a kid. I knew words had power. Start with hope, add some faith. You'll be amazed at what you'll find. Give a hug to someone you love. My family taught me it's better to have more love in your life and that you must never feel that you are less than anyone else. My dreams are of love, of making peace and shining bright. Lift those who are around you. Be brave and do what's right. Until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. Back then, not everyone was allowed to sit at the front of the bus. To protest those rules, one of my first big speeches demanded that people be treated fairly. One day, you will help others. One day, you'll take a stand. Hold hands. We're all sisters and brothers. It's how we'll reach the promised land. At the March on Washington, thousands of people came together to demand that everyone be treated equally. Be brave, my little dreamer. We need you more than ever. The very best dream of all is the one we dream together. I am Martin Luther King Jr., and I know nothing can stop our dream. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe. See you later, alligator.